Hi, it's Karen Vecchio, and I'm here on the 1-year anniversary as being elected Member of Parliament for Elgin Middlesex London. I am here surrounded by Kim Roper and Scott Bandy, my two phenomenal assistants in Ottawa, and we're going to just talk about what's happened in the first year. And these two wonderful people, I say wonderful because they are staff, and we've got to be nice to me today, but they're going to be interviewing me so that we can hear what we actually do here in the House of Commons and how things have changed in the past year. So Scott, how about you get started?
All right, well, Karen, what has been your favorite memory of your first year as an elected Member of Parliament?
Well, Scott, it's been quite a year for sure, but I'd have to still say my favorite memory was back on November 30th being sworn in. Kim was actually there. Unfortunately, you were still in school, but at that time, I was sworn in as the member of the House of Commons for representing the people of Elgin Middlesex London. I was surrounded by my family and friends and many of my colleagues, some that I had worked with before. And it was just one of those incredible moments when I actually got to look in the faces of my mom and dad and realized I had accomplished something really big and how proud they were of me. And it was a really great time for my family as well, because the whole election, of course, was a really long time. But my parents, and especially my husband, Mike, everybody worked so hard. All my kids were out on the streets knocking on doors, and my family were there every day on the campaign trail with me, so it was an incredible experience.
So Karen, it has been a very long year. What is something that's happened over the last year that you did not expect would happen?
Thanks, Kim, for that question. There's been lots of things that I didn't expect. I think one of the things was becoming such close friends and good friends with some of the government members. I work very closely with some members, and whether it's in the community or the committee work that we do for FEWO, which is the Status of Women, or on the Human Committee. And I think also the relationship that I've built with Minister Duclos, who is the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development. I think I've been able to do things that many members in the past who were in Critics World had not done. So I have to say, that's been one of the things that I realized that if you really want to work together, you can work together. And that's been great for me.
So something a lot of people don't know is what it's actually like to be a Member of Parliament. And I'm sure there are lots of surprises once you're elected. So what has been the biggest surprise to you, or one of them at least, since you were elected, being a Member of Parliament?
Well, you know something, I am just plain old Karen, but one thing I realize is that you can't go grocery shopping. You can't just even go in and pick up something quickly at the convenience store. People have questions, and I think the thing that I've been surprised with is that people relate to me much differently now, and it's fantastic, and I absolutely love it, but it's one of those things that when you walk into a place, you're never left alone from politics. Politics is a 24/7 thing, and being the Member of Parliament is 24/7. So even when we have somebody stop at the door to deliver pizza like they did last week, they open their door, oh hi, I know you are a Member of Parliament. So things like that where I just see myself as being Karen, and when I'm sitting on my couch in my pajamas, I see myself as Karen. But when the pizza delivery guy comes over, he sees me as Karen Vecchio, Member of Parliament. So it's a very different thing for me. I love it, but it is very, very different because I look at myself as being just a normal person, and people recognize me more. And so that's been a big change for me.
Is there anything that you would do different or could do different if you had the opportunity?
You know something, there's a lot of different things here as being a Member of Parliament that you recognize. I myself, when it comes to the work-life balance, that's been one of my biggest challenges. And I think some of the things is I came in here and I always call myself Pollyanna. I continue to be optimistic. I continue to be thinking that we can make huge changes. Something that I would do differently is I would have probably prepared myself for the social media side of things. I live in a community where you're accountable to people. So if someone says something nasty to you, it's easy because you know you might bump into them the next day, and so you don't get a lot of that stuff in the writing. I wasn't used to that at a national level. So I think the thing is, even yesterday I said something in the House of Commons, and you get some negative tweets. So I think sometimes the way that I put myself forward, I look at myself as being partisan in Ottawa, but when I'm on the ground, I'm not partisan. So I think the one thing is, it's really difficult for members to show that real side of yourself. So I think that introduction of myself of who is Karen Vecchio, it came out with the first question being in the House of Commons was asking Trudeau about his nannies. And so that was the biggest thing. That day, I got a lot of negative hate mail, and it included everybody going at my hair, which was quite intriguing. But some of those things, it's I wish more people knew me better, to know who I am and what my roots are, so that they would understand why some of these things do matter to me. So I think sometimes I always had a public image and a private image, and I wanted to keep those things very separate. I think I should have, right from the start, blended them so that people knew who Karen Vecchio really was. And so when I'm discussing those things, that it's not the public persona, it's Karen Vecchio, that person you see on her couch from delivering pizza.
So before you were a member of Parliament, people knew you as a staff member for the former member of Parliament, Joe Preston.
Yeah.
So in that experience, you must have known a little bit about what the job was like, but did it help you any in your transition to being a member of Parliament?
You know, I wonder actually how those new members of Parliament actually do it, because there is so much information to get to know. Here in the House of Commons, you're doing a lot of legislative work and dealing with regulations and talking to witnesses and dealing on really high-level things. When you're in the constituency office, you're dealing with the people. You're dealing with what their issues are. So, for instance, you know, you have somebody come in and they're on guaranteed income supplement, but they were cut off because they didn't do their tax returns. That information on knowing how the regulations and how the rules work is so important, because a lot of times it is an easy fix. It can be as simple as filing that tax return, or as simple as just making that phone call to say, well, they mailed it off, and let me fax it through, and usually within 48 hours, something can be expedited. I think a lot of the new members of Parliament wouldn't realize that working within the departments can be very, very easy. Sometimes it can be challenging too, don't get me wrong, but I think what we find is that information that I brought home, or brought here from home, was really, really important, and probably the best asset that I had coming into the job. Knowing that how people are living each and every day, knowing how people who are in child benefit, what are some of their needs, recognizing, especially for the seniors in our community, some of their challenges that they have. So I think knowing firsthand is probably the biggest asset I had. As well with Joe, he taught me a lot of great things, and I was really, really fortunate, because he always said, be true to yourself. And those are things I remember. Be true to yourself, stay Karen, which I continue to do, and Joe always did that too. He always wanted to be the average Joe. So I think recognizing that you have to be accountable to people, but you have to be accountable to yourself as well. So that was a huge lesson I learned from him.
Well, you've had a very busy year. You've had the opportunity to speak numerous times on legislation, ask questions of the government. I'd like to ask you, what is something that you've done that you feel has really worked and has been successful, made a big difference?
You know, I think being in the community has made a big difference. I know that there's many members of Parliament, and I was sitting one day, I think it was last week, with Ruth Ellen Rousseau, who talked about the fact that she, as a member of Parliament, went into her communities after being elected in 2011, and they said, this is the first time an MP's been around. I think for myself, recognizing that being on the ground is the most important thing when you're an elected official, that is the one thing that I think has been an incredible journey for myself, because you're meeting people all the time. I will go to a dinner and come home with three different things for case items, or I'll go to an event and someone will say to me, you know, my mom's having some problems, can you give her a call? So I think those are some of the things that I've really, really learned. But I think my biggest accomplishment to date is probably working with Minister Duclos and doing a lot of the critics role that I've done, because that does affect a lot of people in our communities. We're looking at the poverty strategies, we're looking at different things for equality, we're talking about the benefits going to families, and those are the people that we're affecting. There's still more that needs to be done, and I think it's my job to make sure we continue to bring those issues to the government so that we can get the work going. So I'm pretty proud of that, is the relationships I've built and on the ground and here in Ottawa. So I think those are my biggest accomplishments today.
And your colleagues do compliment me all the time on the great work that you're doing. So you're definitely doing it right. So.
Okay.
So on our last question here, Karen, and I'm sure a lot of people want to know, in such a different environment on Parliament Hill and in the riding, you kind of split your time and still take care of your family and still do your job. What is your biggest struggle as a member of Parliament? But at the same time, what is your biggest joy of being a member of Parliament?
Well, we'll start off with my biggest joy. My biggest joy is actually getting off the plane and seeing my husband every day at the airport, or every Friday night at the airport. I know that when I step out of the airport, that my husband's going to be standing outside his car waiting for me. And so I think that's one of my biggest joys, because I'm going home and I'm going to see my family. And recognizing that I'm doing really good work for the people, and I'm still able to have that quality family. At the same time, my biggest struggle is trying to find that balance between family and work. As a member of parliament, this is what you work for. This is, you're striving to get to the level of being a member of parliament. Once you're there are so many things that you do have to give up. And my family, especially Christian and Hannah, they continue to have to go to a lot of events with me because that's the only time I may have on a weekend. So I know my first weekend back, I worked all weekend, and the only time I got home was on Sunday evening for dinner because I had worked from Friday night till Sunday night kind of thing. So finding that work-life balance has been the biggest challenge and the biggest struggle. It's not seeing my parents. You don't realize how much you miss your parents. I may be 45 years old, but I miss my mom and dad, and it's unbelievable not being able to know that my mom is 5 minutes away, and if I need a peanut butter sandwich, it'd be right up there. That's a big struggle for me. I mean, I have great friends surrounded me, especially the two of you who are always there to support me. But up here can be a very lonely place, and even watching Blue Jays games, and unfortunately they lost, it's different for me. I'm a huge San Jose Sharks fan, and I didn't find watching the playoffs exciting if I wasn't with my family. So that's been the biggest struggle, is because I am such a family person, and now I've been taken out of that area, that environment, where I'm staying in an apartment by myself. And I wear my husband's week-old t-shirt so that I can smell him. I know that sounds crazy. And I call Christian after a dentist appointment, or this morning I got to talk to Hannah and said, Dad's really sick, can you take him some pills? And her and I are FaceTiming, so I get to watch her this morning and do things like that. Garrett, who is my middle son, who is now going to school at George Brown instead of Algonquin College, because he had finished his program last year, that's been a big change for me too, because on my first year, I got to go home to see him most nights. He stayed in residence, but I think he actually stayed at my apartment more often. And so I didn't realize how much I had missed him. And my son Dakota and Marissa, they're both doing their own things right now, but I'm not part of that. So making sure I have that time to reach out to Dakota and say, hey, how are you doing today? And reaching out to Marissa. Those have been struggles, but I'm slowly meeting those challenges. So yeah. But anyway, thank you.
So anything else you want to say to the constituents of Elgin Middlesex London?
Well, this first year has been absolutely fantastic. And once again, I'd like to thank the people of Elgin Middlesex London for electing me to be their member of parliament until at least October of 2019. It has been an incredible ride. The word fun, it doesn't even describe it, because it's such a challenging job. But that's the kind of stuff that I have fun in. That's my enjoyment. So thank you to everybody. Thank you to my incredible family for the unbelievable support that I've had. And thank you to the special people that make my job possible. And that would be Kim and Scott and Dan at home, Kathy, Kaylee, and Jenna. If it wasn't for them, I would not be able to be as successful as I am. So always this is the one point, always surround yourself with great people, and you'll be able to even go further, and that's where I found myself today. So thank you so much, and have a great day.